The cafeteria fell dead silent as Jake Callahan's mocking laughter echoed off the walls, his fingers still clutching the torn shreds of Lena's hoodie. The shy girl who never spoke, never fought back, now stood exposed, but not broken. Every student leaned forward, phones forgotten, as Lena slowly raised her head. The look in her eyes wasn't fear. It wasn't embarrassment. It was something far more dangerous. Something will happen next in this story that you would have never imagined. From the way her muscles tensed to the scars visible across her shoulders, these weren't the marks of a victim. They were the roadmap of a champion. The quiet girl they'd tormented for months wasn't who they thought she was. And in 3 seconds flat, their entire world was about to change forever. From which country are you enjoying this story? Please make sure to tell us in the comments. And subscribe, because what comes next will rewrite everything you thought you knew about revenge. The cafeteria buzzed with the usual chaos. Shouts, laughter, the clatter of trays, the occasional screech of a chair dragged too fast across the floor. At a corner table, Lena Carter sat alone, her shoulders hunched slightly, her fingers tracing the edge of her notebook. She didn't look up, didn't engage. She never did. Her hoodie was too big, swallowing her frame, a shield more than a piece of clothing. The fabric was worn, the cuffs frayed from years of use. It had been her brother's once, before he left. Before a lot of things. Across the room, Jake Callahan and his friends lounged at their usual table, kings of the school, untouchable. Jake had the kind of smile that made teachers look the other way, the kind of charm that made even the strictest adults give him one more chance. But Lena knew better. She had seen what happened when that smile dropped. A fry sailed through the air, hitting the back of Lena's head. She didn't flinch. Another followed, bouncing off her shoulder. A few snickers rippled through the group. "Hey Mouse," Jake called, voice dripping with mock concern. "You gonna eat that or just stare at it all day?" Lena kept her eyes down. Silence was safer. Silence meant it would pass. But today, Jake wasn't in the mood to let it pass. He pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly, and sauntered toward her. The room's noise dimmed slightly, the way it always did when something interesting was about to happen. "Seriously," Jake said, leaning over her, his shadow falling across her notebook. "You ever gonna talk? Or are you just, like, broken?" Lena exhaled slowly, her fingers tightening around her pen. Jake grinned, glancing back at his friends. "I think she's broken." One of his buddies laughed. "Maybe she needs a reset." Jake reached out, flicking the edge of her hood. "What's under here, huh? You hiding something?" Lena's grip on the pen turned white-knuckled. Then, his fingers curled into the fabric of her hoodie, yanking hard. The tear was loud. The room went dead silent. Lena's hoodie split at the shoulder, the fabric giving way under Jake's rough pull. The sleeve hung loose, exposing the tight, corded muscle beneath. For a second, no one moved. Then laughter. Cruel, sharp, filling the air like broken glass. Phones came up, flashes going off. Lena didn't move. She didn't cover herself. She just lifted her head. And Jake, still grinning, still drunk on his own power, finally saw her eyes. Something in them made his smile falter. Because Lena Carter wasn't afraid. She was angry. The memories came fast, unstoppable. A gym years ago. The smell of sweat and leather. The sound of gloves hitting pads. A man's voice, steady, firm. Asterisk again. Asterisk. A younger Lena, small but fierce, striking over and over, her knuckles raw, her breath even. "Control," the man said. Asterisk, control is everything. Asterisk. She had learned control. She had learned patience. But she had also learned how to break a nose in one clean motion. Back in the cafeteria, Jake was still laughing, but it was weaker now, uncertain. "What?" he sneered. "You gonna do something, Mouse?" Lena set her pen down, very carefully. Then she stood. The room held its breath. The first hit sent Jake stumbling back into a table. The second snapped his head to the side. The third never landed. Hands grabbed her, pulling her back. Shouts filled the air. Someone screamed. But all Lena saw was Jake on the ground, blood on his lip, his eyes wide with something she hadn't seen before. Fear. The principal's office was cold. The chair creaked under her as she sat, her hands folded in her lap. Outside, voices argued. You can't suspend her. Did you even see what they did? She put 3 boys in the hospital. She defended herself. Lena didn't speak. She just waited. Because the truth was coming. And when it did, nothing would be the same. The fluorescent lights buzzed like trapped insects in the principal's office, their harsh glow reflecting off the polished wooden desk where Lena sat perfectly still. The torn fabric of her hoodie sleeve draped loosely over her shoulder, revealing the taut muscles beneath. Muscles that didn't belong to an ordinary high school girl. Principal Higgins exhaled slowly. His fingers steepled beneath his chin as he studied the silent girl before him. The video playing on his tablet showed the incident in brutal clarity. Jake Callahan's smug grin as he tore at her clothes, the split second before everything changed, and then the blur of motion as Lena moved faster than anyone thought possible. 3 boys had hit the ground before teachers could intervene. Lena, Higgins began, his voice carefully neutral. I need you to understand the severity of this situation. Jake Callahan has a broken nose. Tyler Morris is missing a tooth. And Ryan Hart's parents are threatening to press charges for what they're calling excessive force. Lena's fingers twitched against her knees, but her face remained impassive. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence. Higgins leaned forward. I've reviewed your file. There's nothing in here about any special training. No disciplinary issues. You've been the model of a quiet, unremarkable student for 2 years. His eyes narrowed slightly. So I have to ask, where did you learn to fight like that? The door burst open before Lena could respond. Not that she had any intention of answering. A woman in a tailored navy suit stood in the doorway, her sharp heels clicking against the tile as she entered. Lena didn't need to look up to know who it was. The faint scent of jasmine and gunpowder told her everything. Principal Higgins, the woman said smoothly, extending a manicured hand. Miranda Carter. I apologize for my delay. I was in meetings all morning. Higgins stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Ms. Carter, Let me stop you right there, Miranda interrupted, her smile never wavering as she took the seat beside Lena without waiting for an invitation. I've already seen the footage. I've spoken with our family attorney, and I think we can all agree this unfortunate incident was the inevitable result of prolonged harassment that your staff repeatedly failed to address. Lena kept her eyes fixed on the scuff marks near the base of Higgins' desk. She knew this routine. Higgins flushed. With all due respect, Ms. Carter, regardless of what led up to it, your daughter hospitalized 3 students. And how many times did those same students harass her? Miranda countered, pulling a slim tablet from her briefcase. I have records of 14 separate incidents reported to your office in the past 6 months alone. Cafeteria staff can corroborate the food throwing. The janitor has footage of them vandalizing Lena's locker last week. She tapped the screen, her voice turning icy. Tell me, Principal Higgins, at what point were you planning to intervene? Or were you waiting until they did something even more permanently damaging? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. The basement. The drive home passed in silence. Lena stared out the window as the suburban landscape blurred past, her knuckles throbbing in time with her heartbeat. The Carter residence looked like every other house on the block. Neatly trimmed hedges, a freshly painted front door, nothing to suggest what lay beneath. Lena went straight to the basement. The moment the door closed behind her, the carefully constructed mask slipped. Her breath came faster as she crossed the worn mats to the far wall, where a series of framed photos hung in shadow. 8-year-old Lena, barely taller than the heavy bag beside her, her tiny fists wrapped in bright pink tape. 12-year-old Lena standing on a podium in Bangkok, a gold medal around her neck, her father's proud hand on her shoulder. 14-year-old Lena in a hospital bed, her right arm in a cast, her father's funeral program visible on the bedside table. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the last photo, the only one from after. 15-year-old Lena standing beside her mother in front of this very house, both of them wearing identical empty smiles. The day they decided to disappear. A knock at the basement door startled her from the memories. "Lena." Miranda's voice carried an unfamiliar note of tension. "We need to talk." The aftermath. Upstairs, the television played muted news footage of the cafeteria fight. Lena's mother stood stiffly by the window, her phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, I understand that," she said tightly. "But I need you to understand, if this gets out, it won't just be about Lena. It will expose everything." Lena froze in the doorway. Her mother turned, her expression hardening when she saw her daughter. "I'll call you back." The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken history. "It's gone viral," Miranda said finally, tossing her phone onto the couch. "The fight. The video. Every major network has picked it up. And someone," she took a sharp breath, "someone recognized you." Lena's blood turned to ice. "Not your name," Miranda continued, pacing now, "but your form. Your stance. There are people talking, asking questions we can't afford to have answered." The unspoken truth hung heavy between them. They hadn't just left their old life behind. They'd run from it. And now, after 2 years of perfect silence, Lena might have just destroyed everything. The call. The phone rang at exactly 9:47 p.m. Miranda hesitated for 3 rings before answering. "Yes." Lena watched from the staircase as her mother's face drained of color. "I see," Miranda whispered. Then, after a long pause, "We'll be ready." When she hung up, her hands were shaking. "They know," she said quietly. "They're coming." The rain started just past midnight. Hard, angry sheets of water that rattled against the windows like thrown gravel. Lena sat cross-legged on her bed, methodically wrapping her bruised knuckles with athletic tape. The familiar routine calmed her, the tightness of the tape a grounding pressure against her skin. Downstairs, her mother moved through the house like a soldier preparing for siege. Locking doors, closing blinds, checking the security system for the 3rd time in an hour. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. Lena flexed her taped fingers. "Who called?" Miranda paused at the bedroom doorway, her silhouette rigid against the hallway light. "Someone we hoped would never find us." The answer told Lena nothing and everything at once. 2 years earlier, Bangkok. The arena lights burned white-hot overhead, the roar of the crowd vibrating through Lena's bones. At 14, she was the youngest fighter in the tournament by 3 years, but the way she moved, fluid, precise, deadly, left no doubt she belonged. Her father's voice cut through the noise from the corner. "Control, Lena. Don't let him rush you." Across the ring, her opponent, a hulking 18-year-old from Jakarta, bounced on his toes, sweat flying from his brow. The scorecards were even. This final round would decide it. The bell clanged. Lena moved like water. Slip, pivot, strike. Her elbow connected with the boy's ribs with a satisfying crack. He staggered. The crowd erupted. Then everything went wrong. A flash of movement at ringside. A man in a too-nice suit pushing past security. Her father stepping forward, his face darkening. The gunshot was louder than any crowd. Present day, safe house. Lena blinked back to the present as her mother tossed a packed duffel bag onto the bed. "We leave in 20 minutes. The contents spilled slightly. Passports, cash bundles, a Glock 19. Lena stared at the weapon. "You promised no more guns." "And you promised not to fight," Miranda countered sharply, then immediately softened. She knelt before her daughter, her usually perfect hair coming undone at the temples. "Listen to me. The men who killed your father, they're part of something bigger. A syndicate that owns fighters like racehorses." Lena's stomach turned. She knew this story, just not the ending. Miranda continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "When you won that junior championship in Bangkok, you didn't just beat their star prospect. You humiliated him, made him worthless to them." Her fingers trembled around the gun. "That bullet was never meant for your father." The truth hit like a knee to the gut. All these years, Lena had carried the guilt like a second skeleton. If she'd been slower, if she'd thrown the fight like her father warned her to, A car door slammed outside. Miranda was on her feet in an instant, peering through the blinds. Too late. The arrival. 3 black SUVs idled at the curb, their headlights cutting through the rainy dark. A man emerged from the lead vehicle. Mid-40s, impeccably dressed, his salt and pepper hair glinting under the street lamp. Lena's breath caught. She knew that walk. That cold, calculating grace. Victor Chen, the man who'd owned the fighter she'd beaten that night in Bangkok. Miranda's hand found hers, squeezing tight. Whatever happens next, remember, you're not that scared little girl anymore. The doorbell rang. The offer. Victor sat in their kitchen like an old family friend, sipping tea from Lena's favorite mug. The absurdity of it would have been funny if not for the 4 armed men flanking the exits. "Miranda," he said pleasantly, "still beautiful as ever, though I prefer you without the..." He gestured to her blonde highlights. Miranda's smile could have frozen hell. "To what do we owe the pleasure, Victor?" Victor's gaze slid to Lena, lingering on her taped hands. "The video, of course. My associates in Vegas nearly choked on their caviar when they saw little Lena, the ghost Carter, resurface." His smile didn't reach his eyes. Imagine their surprise to learn she's been playing normal American teenager all this time. Lena's pulse roared in her ears. The nickname, the Ghost, was one she hadn't heard since Bangkok. Victor set down his tea. "Here's what's going to happen. You come back. 1 fight. Against my new protege." Miranda stiffened. "Absolutely not. Not finished," Victor interrupted. He pulled a phone from his pocket, tapped the screen, and slid it across the table. The security footage showed Lena's grandparents, her mother's parents, sitting on their Florida patio, unaware of the camera watching them. Victor's voice was gentle. "1 fight. Or I introduce myself to your lovely family." The decision. The basement training area felt smaller now, the heavy bag swaying slightly as if agitated by the storm outside. Lena unleashed a spinning back kick that sent it crashing into the wall. Miranda watched from the stairs, her arms crossed. "We could run again." Lena shook out her aching leg. For how long? They both knew the answer. Miranda's phone buzzed. Another news alert about the mystery girl from the viral fight video. The hashtag who is she was trending nationwide. Lena picked up her father's old training journal, the pages worn from years of study. She flipped to his final entry, the night before the tournament. Asterisk, remember Lena, the strongest fighters aren't those with nothing to lose, but those who choose what's worth losing. Asterisk. She closed the book with a snap. "Tell Chen I'll do it." The private jet smelled like leather and expensive whiskey. Lena pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the clouds churn beneath them like troubled water. Across the aisle, Victor Chen tapped away on his laptop, the glow of the screen reflecting off his sharp cheekbones. He hadn't spoken since takeoff, leaving Lena to drown in the silence of her own thoughts. Miranda had stayed behind. To tie up loose ends, she'd said, but the way her fingers had trembled as she adjusted Lena's jacket told a different story. There were things her mother wasn't saying. Things Lena wasn't sure she wanted to know. Victor's voice cut through the hum of the engines. "You should eat." He nudged a tray of food toward her. Seared tuna, roasted vegetables, a glass of sparkling water with a twist of lime. The kind of meal served in places where people discussed murders over dessert. Lena didn't touch it. "Where exactly are we going?" Victor smiled, the kind of smile a shark might give before biting. "Somewhere no one will think to look for America's newest viral sensation." He closed his laptop with a snap. "Macau?" The underground. The car ride from the airport was a blur of neon and shadow. Macau at night was a living thing, a pulsing, breathing beast of light and sound. But when they pulled up to an unmarked warehouse near the docks, the glamour faded fast. 2 men with neck tattoos and empty eyes patted Lena down at the door. One of them lingered too long near her hips, his fingers brushing the waistband of her jeans. She caught his wrist and squeezed, just enough to make the bones creak. Victor chuckled. "Still got that fire, I see." Inside, the warehouse opened up into a cavernous space lined with steel cages. The smell of sweat and blood hung thick in the air. At the center, a raised octagon stood under harsh floodlights, its canvas stained with the ghosts of past fights. A familiar voice sent ice down Lena's spine. Well, well, the ghost returns. Dmitry Volkov leaned against the cage. His massive arms crossed over his chest. The Russian had been Victor's top enforcer back in Bangkok, the man who dragged her father's body out of the arena while Lena screamed. Lena's hands curled into fists. Victor clapped his hands together. Now that introductions are out of the way. "Where's the fighter?" Lena interrupted. Victor's smile widened. He snapped his fingers. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, and Lena's blood turned to ice. The opponent. The girl couldn't have been older than 16. She stood barefoot in the cage, her slight frame swimming in an oversized hoodie, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. But it was her eyes that made Lena's stomach drop. Wide, terrified, and painfully familiar. She'd seen those eyes in the mirror every day after her father died. Victor draped an arm around Lena's shoulders, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Meet Sari, our newest acquisition. Orphaned last year when a rival syndicate burned her village to the ground." He squeezed Lena's shoulder. "Sound familiar?" Lena shook him off. "You want me to fight a child?" "Not just fight," Victor corrected. He nodded to Dmitry, who tossed a contract onto the table between them. "You train her for the big event next month. And then..." He let the sentence hang. Lena didn't need him to finish. She'd been in this world long enough to know how it worked. They wanted her to turn this girl into a killer. And then they wanted the girl to kill her. The trap, the training facility, turned out to be a converted shipping container behind the warehouse. Lena paced the cramped space while Sari sat cross-legged on the floor, picking at the tape on her wrists. "Why are you helping them?" Sari's voice was barely above a whisper. Lena stopped pacing. "I'm not." Sari looked up, her dark eyes searching Lena's face. "Then why are you here?" The truth sat heavy on Lena's tongue. Because her mother had made a deal. Because her grandparents' lives were on the line. Because some part of her still believed she deserved this. Instead, she asked, "How did Victor find you?" Sari's fingers stilled. "After the fire, there was a man. He said he could give me revenge." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "He didn't say I'd have to earn it." Lena knelt in front of her. "Show me your hands." Sari hesitated, then held them out. Palms up. The knuckles were raw, the fingers trembling slightly. The hands of someone who'd been training non-stop with no idea what they were really training for. Lena turned them over, examining the calluses. "You're left-handed." Sari blinked. "How did you?" "Your right hook is sloppy because you're forcing it." Lena stood, rolling her shoulders. "First lesson, stop fighting who you are." The revelation. The sound of raised voices woke Lena hours later. She crept to the container's door, pressing her ear against the cold metal. "Wasn't part of the deal." Miranda's voice, sharp with fury. Victor's reply was calm. "The deal changed when your daughter became internet famous." A pause. Then Miranda, quieter. "She'll never go through with it. Then I guess your parents will have to pay for that loyalty." Lena's breath caught. Footsteps approached. She barely had time to scramble back to her cot before the door swung open. Miranda stood framed in the doorway, her face drawn. "We need to talk." The safehouse bathroom mirror showed a stranger. Lena splashed water on her face, watching droplets trace the hollows under her eyes. Eyes that had seen too much in too few years. The knuckles of her right hand were split open again, the wounds fresh from last night's training session with Sari. Miranda's reflection appeared behind her in the mirror, holding out a clean towel. "You're pushing too hard." Lena took the towel without meeting her mother's gaze. The unspoken words between them had grown teeth over the past week, sharp things that drew blood when they surfaced. "You knew." Lena pressed the towel to her face, her voice muffled. "All this time, you knew Victor was alive. That he was looking for us." Miranda's hands stilled on the first aid kit. I knew surviving meant more than running. A car horn blared outside their Macau hideout, a crumbling apartment above a noodle shop that smelled of stale grease and desperation. Lena turned, studying her mother's carefully constructed mask. The perfect blonde hair, the designer knockoff sunglasses, the pistol tucked into the waistband of her slacks. How much did you steal from him? The question hung in the air like gun smoke. Miranda exhaled through her nose. Enough to matter. The betrayal. Sari was waiting at the docks when Lena arrived for training, her slight frame silhouetted against the dawn light. The girl had taken to wearing Lena's old hoodie, the one from the cafeteria, stitched back together with clumsy hands. "You're late," Sari said, but there was no malice in it. Just the quiet observation of someone used to being forgotten. Lena tossed her the wraps. Had to shake tails. It wasn't entirely a lie. 3 times in the past week, she'd spotted Dimitri's men following her through the markets, testing her awareness, probing for weakness. Sari caught the wraps with one hand, her left, always her left, and began the familiar routine. "Victor wants me ready by Friday." Lena froze mid-stretch. That's 3 days. Sari's fingers trembled slightly as she taped her knuckles. "There's a shipment coming in. High rollers from Moscow. He wants." She trailed off, swallowing hard. Lena didn't need her to finish. Victor was accelerating the timeline, which meant whatever Miranda had stolen, he needed it back sooner than expected. The heavy bag swayed as Sari unleashed a vicious combination. Left hook, right cross, spinning elbow. The moves were cleaner now, more precise. Deadlier. Lena watched the girl's footwork, the way she shifted her weight. "You're holding back on the follow-through." Sari wiped sweat from her brow. "I know. Why?" The girl met Lena's gaze for the first time that morning. "Because when the time comes, I want it to hurt." The meeting. Victor's office overlooked the Pearl River, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the casino's neon glow. He stood with his back to the door when Lena entered, swirling a glass of amber liquid. "Your mother was always terrible at math," he said without turning around. "She took exactly $27 million from our accounts the night she disappeared. Enough to disappear, not enough to matter." He finally faced her, his smile razor-thin. Or so she thought. Lena remained by the door, her hands loose at her sides. "Ready. What do you really want?" Victor set down his glass. "The ledger." A cold finger traced Lena's spine. The ledger. Her father's meticulous records of every fight, every payment, every dirty secret the syndicate had buried over the years. "You think I have it?" Victor's laugh was humorless. "I think your mother is smarter than she looks. And I think..." He tapped a button on his desk. The wall screen flickered to life, showing security footage of Miranda meeting with a gray-haired man in a Kowloon tea shop. She's running out of time to be clever. Lena's breath caught. The man on screen was Inspector Lau, the Hong Kong detective who'd investigated her father's murder. Victor leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Friday night. You and Sari in the cage. The ledger delivered by midnight." His smile widened. "Or your mother joins your father in the ground." The truth. The storm hit just past sunset, rain lashing the windows of the noodle shop as Lena confronted Miranda in their tiny kitchen. "You were going to turn him in." Lena's voice shook. "After all this time. After everything." Miranda didn't deny it. She just stared at the photo on her phone. Lena's grandparents feeding seagulls on a Florida pier. Some debts can't be repaid with money. Lena's fist connected with the wall, sending a spiderweb of cracks through the plaster. "We had a deal. No cops, no revenge, just survival." "And what kind of life is that?" Miranda snapped, her composure shattering. "Looking over our shoulders forever? Waiting for the day Victor." The window exploded inward. Lena reacted on instinct, tackling Miranda to the ground as gunfire chewed through the space where her mother's head had been. Glass rained down around them as another volley ripped through the apartment. Dimitri's voice carried from the alley below. Bring me the girl. Miranda gripped Lena's arm, her fingers like steel. The ledger's in the basement. Third floorboard from the. A bullet tore through the refrigerator beside them. Lena didn't wait to hear the rest. She dragged Miranda toward the fire escape, her mind racing. Victor had moved up the timeline, which meant only one thing. Sari had told him about the ledger. The escape. The fire escape groaned under their weight as they descended into the storm-slick alley. Somewhere above, Dimitri's men kicked in their apartment door. Miranda pressed a key into Lena's palm. Go. Now. Lena shook her head. Not without you. Her mother's smile was sad. I'm the reason we're in this mess. She touched Lena's cheek, a fleeting gesture she hadn't made since Lena was a child. Finish what your father started. Then she was gone, sprinting toward the street as a diversion. 2 gunshots rang out. A scream. Lena ran the other way, the key biting into her flesh. The ledger was their only leverage now. Their only chance. And Sari had betrayed them. The basement of the old fight gym smelled of mildew and old sweat. Lena crouched in the darkness, her fingers tracing the rough edges of the 3rd floorboard from the west wall. The wood groaned as she pried it up, revealing a rusted metal box beneath. Her father's initials were scratched into the lid. *JC. Just visible beneath years of grime. Lena's breath hitched. She hadn't seen this box since the night before he died. The lock yielded to a sharp twist. Inside, nestled between stacks of fight tapes, lay a leather-bound notebook. The ledger. Lena flipped it open to a random page. June 12th. Payment to Judge Ramos. Case dismissed. Fighter number 7 cleared for next tournament. Another page. September 3rd. Moscow shipment arrived. 12 girls, ages 14 to 17. Buyer, V. Chen. Her stomach turned. This wasn't just a record of fixed fights. It was a roadmap to the syndicate's entire operation. The judges they owned, the cops on their payroll, the human trafficking rings that funded it all. A shadow moved at the top of the stairs. Lena snapped the ledger shut, reaching for the knife in her boot. Easy. Sari's voice was barely a whisper as she descended. Her left eye swollen shut, her lips split. They're looking everywhere for you. Lena didn't lower the knife. You told Victor about the ledger. Sari flinched. I told him Miranda was meeting with a cop. That's all. She wiped blood from her mouth. Didn't stop him from beating me half to death when you got away. The girl's injuries weren't faked. Lena knew real damage when she saw it. She lowered the blade slightly. Why come here? Sari reached into her hoodie pocket. Lena tensed, but what emerged wasn't a weapon. It was a photograph, creased and faded. A younger Sari stood between 2 adults, her parents, presumably. And beside them, smiling with an arm around Sari's father, was Lena's own dad. Your father came to our village when I was 9, Sari said softly. He promised to get us out, teach me to fight for real. Her fingers trembled on the photo. 2 weeks later, Victor's men burned it to the ground. Lena's throat tightened. She'd heard this story before, just with different names, different faces. How many lives had Victor ruined chasing after her family? Sari met her gaze. I didn't betray you. I've been waiting 2 years for this chance. What chance? The girl's good I burned with a familiar fire. To finish what your father started. The plan. The safehouse bathroom light flickered as Lena stitched up Sari's split brow with steady hands. The girl didn't flinch, just clenched her jaw and stared at their reflection in the cracked mirror. Victor's moving the fight to Pier 9, Sari said through gritted teeth. Midnight. High rollers only. Lena tied off the suture. And my mother. Alive. For now. Sari turned to face her. He's using her as bait. The deal is the ledger for her life. Lena packed the medical kit with deliberate slowness, buying time to think. Victor wouldn't let either of them walk away, ledger or no. This was a trap, one they could turn to their advantage. She opened the ledger to a dog-eared page near the back. her father's personal notes. The handwriting was rushed, desperate. Asterisk, if reading this, I'm dead. The account numbers below hold enough to bury them all. Password is Lena's first tournament date. Asterisk. Her fingers traced the string of numbers beneath. A Swiss account. A way out. Lena looked up at Sari. You still want to fight? The girl's swollen face twisted into something like a smile. I want to win. The setup. Pier 9 stank of fish and diesel fuel. The venue was a converted cargo hold, its steel walls lined with wealthy men in tailored suits and hungry eyes. No cage this time, just a chalk circle drawn on the concrete floor. Victor sat on a raised dais with Dimitri at his shoulder, sipping cognac from a crystal glass. Miranda knelt at his feet, her hands bound, her left cheek purpling with a fresh bruise. Lena stepped into the light, the ledger tucked under her arm. A hush fell over the crowd. Victor spread his hands. Lena Carter. The prodigal daughter returns. His gaze dropped to the book. I trust that's the genuine article. Lena flipped it open to a random page and read aloud, Asterisk March 4th. Payment to Inspector Lau to overlook the warehouse incident. Bodies disposed of by Asterisk. Enough. Victor's smile never wavered, but his knuckles whitened around his glass. Toss it here. Lena held it out, then let it drop to the concrete with a thud. Come get it. The crowd murmured. Victor's eye twitched. Then he nodded to Dimitri. The Russian cracked his knuckles and stepped forward. Sari moved like lightning, intercepting him with a knee to the gut. Wrong opponent. Victor sighed. I'd hoped we could do this civilly. He snapped his fingers. The cargo hold doors burst open. 6 armed men filed in, forming a loose circle around the fighting area. Lena didn't blink. You brought shooters to a fistfight? Insurance. Victor picked up the ledger, flipping through it with growing confusion. Where are the account numbers? Lena smiled. What accounts? The realization hit Victor like a physical blow. This wasn't the complete ledger, just the decoy her father had planted for this exact scenario. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Victor's face darkened. Kill them. The fight. The first gunman fell to Sari's elbow to the throat, the second to Lena's knife between the ribs. Chaos erupted. Wealthy patrons scrambled for the exits as Lena and Sari moved in perfect sync. 2 fighters trained by the same man, executing the same brutal techniques. Dimitri lunged for Lena, his massive arms swinging. She ducked, driving an uppercut into his solar plexus. The Russian gasped. Sari's spinning kick caught him across the jaw, sending him crashing into a support beam. Miranda had somehow gotten free, wresting a pistol from one of the guards. She fired twice, both shots finding their marks. Victor was backing toward a side exit, the decoy ledger still clutched in his hands. Lena sprinted after him, dodging a wild punch from a panicked bodyguard. She caught Victor at the pier's edge, the black water churning below them. You'll never win, Victor spat. There will always be another me. Lena grabbed his wrist, twisting until the ledger fell into the harbor. Maybe, but not tonight. She let him go just long enough to see the relief in his eyes. Then her foot connected with his chest, sending him over the railing. The aftermath. The police found enough evidence in the cargo hold to put half the syndicate away for life. The real ledger, with its damning account numbers, had already been emailed to Interpol from a burner phone. Miranda hugged Lena on the docks, her grip almost painful. Your father would be proud. Lena looked past her to where Sari stood watching the sunrise, the hoodie sleeves pulled over her bandaged hands. We're not done, Lena said quietly. Miranda followed her gaze. No, but we're free. The safe house in Manila smelled of salt and rust, the ocean air creeping in through the cracks in the corrugated metal walls. Lena sat at a rickety wooden table, cleaning her knife with methodical strokes. Across from her, Miranda scrolled through news reports on a laptop. Another syndicate lieutenant arrested in Hong Kong, another trafficking ring uncovered. Sari had been gone for 3 weeks. No note, no goodbye. Just an empty bed one morning and the faint scent of jasmine lingering in the air. Miranda closed the laptop with a sigh. She left for a reason. Lena slid the knife back into its sheath. She left because we stopped fighting. The truth sat heavy between them. In the 2 months since Pier 9, they'd been running again. Not from Victor's ghost, but from the emptiness that came after vengeance. The burner phone on the table buzzed. Lena flipped it open to a grainy image. Sorry, bruised but alive, standing in what looked like a warehouse. The message beneath held only coordinates and 2 words. They're back. The warehouse. The address led them to an abandoned textile factory on the outskirts of Jakarta. The air here was thick with the scent of dye and mildew. The silence broken only by the distant drip of water. Sari emerged from the shadows, her left arm in a sling, her right eye swollen shut. Took you long enough. Miranda moved first, pulling the girl into a fierce hug. You idiot. Lena waited, scanning the darkness. Who's back? Sari wiped blood from her lip. Dmitri survived. He's rebuilding. The name hit like a gut punch. The Russian should be dead. Lena had watched him go down hard at Pier 9. Sari limped toward a rusted metal door. He's got 6 girls. Training them like... Her voice broke. Like he trained me. The door creaked open, revealing a makeshift gym beyond. Heavy bags hung from the ceiling. A chalk circle marked the floor. And against the far wall, 6 young girls, none older than 14, huddled together like frightened animals. Lena's vision swam with memories. Bangkok. Her father's voice. The smell of leather and sweat. Miranda's hand found her shoulder. We can call the police. No. Lena stepped forward, her boots scuffing the chalk line. This ends how it started. The message. Dimitri's hideout was a penthouse above a Macau casino, all glass and chrome and arrogance. The Russian answered the door shirtless, his torso a roadmap of scars, including the fresh one Lena had given him. His smile showed too many teeth. Little ghost. Lena didn't waste words. She threw the first punch. Dmitri blocked, countering with a haymaker that sent her crashing into a glass coffee table. Shards bit into her palms as she rolled clear. You should have stayed gone, he growled, advancing. Lena spat blood. You should have died when you had the chance. They moved through the penthouse in a brutal dance, Dimitri's brute strength against Lena's precision. A lamp shattered. A painting ripped from the wall. Outside, sirens wailed. Dmitri glanced toward the sound. A fatal distraction. Lena's foot connected with his knee in a sickening crunch. The Russian went down with a roar. She stood over him, breathing hard. The girls are safe. The police have your records. Dmitri laughed through the pain. And what? You're the hero now. Lena looked at her reflection in the broken glass. The bruises, the blood, the eyes that had seen too much. No, she said quietly. Just done. The door burst open. Armed officers swarmed in, shouting commands. Lena didn't resist when they cuffed her. The aftermath. The prison visiting room smelled of bleach and regret. Miranda sat across from Lena, her fingers tapping an uneven rhythm on the table. Lawyer says you'll get 5 years max. Lena shrugged. Worth it. Outside the barred window, a bird soared past. Free in a way Lena hadn't been since childhood. Miranda leaned forward. Sari's with the girls. They're testifying against the rest of the network. A ghost of a smile touched Lena's lips. Good. Her mother hesitated, then slid a photograph across the table. A younger Lena standing beside her father in a Bangkok gym, both of them grinning. He'd be proud, Miranda whispered. Lena studied the photo, the familiar ache in her chest. I know. The guard announced time was up. As Miranda stood to leave, Lena called after her, when I get out, no more running. Her mother's smile was the realest thing in the room. No more running. Epilogue. 3 years later. The gym in Phuket was smaller than the one in Bangkok, but the smell was the same. Leather, sweat, determination. Lena adjusted the pads on her arms as her newest student, a wiry 12-year-old with 2 big gloves, prepared to strike. Remember, Lena said, Control first. Power comes later. The girl nodded, her dark eyes serious. Outside, the ocean glittered under the afternoon sun. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Miranda and Sari were building a new safe house. A new beginning. Lena raised the pads. Again, the girl threw the punch. Not perfect, but better. Lena smiled. Some debts, it turned out, could only be repaid forward.